Welcome to something to talk about. Welcome to something to talk about.
Hi! Welcome to Something to Talk About. My name is Taco, and I got a what-if small council for you, right? So let's just get into it before we go, actually. Let's not just get into it. Spoilers for this one. In order to even talk about this what-if timeline, I have to talk about the actual timeline, and that's spoilering Duncan Egg, Hedge Knight, their first book. So if you don't know what happens in that book, and you don't want to know what happens in that book, don't watch this. Go read or listen to that because it's really good, and then come back, right? This is one of those A Song of Ice and Fire books. This is like A Song of Ice and Fire lore. What is this? Let's talk about it. I'll be making what-if videos in the vein of small councils. This stemmed from my comment on my Daemon Blackfyre event. I'm not going to read all this. You guys know I'm doing small councils for would-be kings. I don't pull from existing lore. I don't make up anything from scratch. I try to keep this completely grounded as possible, and this is all based on the lore and just my opinion. Tell me yours in the small comments. Tell me yours in the comments. There you go. That's English. Oh, man. All right. I'm ready to go. You guys ready to go? Baelor Breakspear. A guy named Kevin Thomas requested this. See, I wrote it down. Thank you. This is one that I never thought of. Like when I first made my list of which kings to cover, this one was one that I didn't even think about until Kevin Thomas was like, you got to cover Baelor Breakspear. Like, what if him? I'm like, yeah, all right. Yeah, that's really good. All right. So where is this split? I'm going to anger a lot of people with this one. I don't think you guys are going to like this split because I'm kind of getting rid of one of the best storylines in the entire Song of Ice and Fire lore in order to make this timeline happen. So thank God I can't just go, thank God I'm not changing anything, right? This is going to change anything. The books are still there and they still follow the better timeline. Okay. So I thought about this. Clearly, Baelor needs to not die. This is what I'm getting at. Spoilers. At Ashford, right? But how? Is he just not there? Does Maekar just not hit him? I don't like any of those. No, I don't like any of those. And if you don't remember, he specifically, Baelor Breakspear, the eldest son of Daemon II the Good, and doing a little trial of 7 for Dunk, right? Sir Duncan the Tall. And at the end of the trial, his brother, maybe being mind-controlled, who knows? There's a lot of weird theories that a certain person on this list is actually mind-controlling him during this. But anyways, his brother Maekar cracks him over the head. His head caves in. He doesn't know until he takes his helmet off. It's awful, right? And that's how Baelor Breakspear dies. So how do I make that not happen, right? Does a trial, do I just make him just not show up? No. What would cause that? He's got like a pop tire in his car on the drive up? No. And Maekar has to hit him or else it wouldn't make sense, right? Because he was in the tournament, or he was in the trial, and Maekar was the only combatant that could actually attack him, right? Because he was surrounded by Kingsguards. So the Kingsguards couldn't fight him. So Maekar had to. So if Baelor is in the trial, Maekar's going to fight him. So let's just say he wasn't in the trial. But how? Baelor doesn't go and talk to Dunk. So Dunk never asked for a trial. So Dunk gets his hand cut off and the world moves on. Yes, this is bleak. It removes one of the best characters from the entire timeline. So Duncan never becomes a thing. And Duncan Egg adventures don't happen. And honestly, this outcome was way more likely in the actual timeline than the actual timeline we got. Yeah, it's crazy that what happened actually happened, right? So in the books, the fact that the hand of the king and the heir to the Iron Throne wants to fight for this Hedge Knight, and then he dies, and it pushes us into kind of a much darker timeline than like in the, you know, the timeline gets a lot darker because Baelor dies, right? So that's kind of crazy. It's actually, in my opinion, a lot more likely if all of it happens if everybody shows up at the tournament, right? Arryn, Bright Flame, breaks Tansel Tutal's fingers, Dunk punches him, kicks him, right? And then he gets put in jail, and then he ends up asking for a trial, right? But what if he just doesn't? What if Baelor doesn't go talk to him? Because Baelor goes and talks to him in the main timeline. He goes, well, you could, maybe call a council. But he just doesn't do that. He's like, oh, so a hedge knight kicked him? That's really unfortunate that hedge knight's going to lose his hand. How about this? We don't cut his foot off. Deal? Everyone's like, yeah, deal. Just chop his hand off. King's justice. Cool, we move on, right? Why is the whole world stopping because some hedge knight is going to lose his hand, right? And that's it. Everybody else wanted that to happen. Baelor just decides no, and he doesn't want that to happen because he knows that his nephew's kind of a bunghole, right? But in this timeline, he doesn't. He's like, well, I know Arryn Brightflame's kind of a jerk, this guy, I don't know, let him move his hand. They still think that he attacked Darren the Drunkard too. So, maybe he's like, dude, you attacked like actually one of my, he's a bit of a bit of a drinker, but he's a cool nephew. Why'd you attack him? Yeah, let the hedge knight lose his hand and then we'll move on. So that's the timeline. And that literally cuts out Sir Duncan the Tall, no pun intended, one of the best characters in the entire lore, and gets rid of all the Duncan Egg series. So I'm sorry, but this timeline, that happens. You right? You good? You mad? Did I get a bunch of thumbs downs? That's the way that Baelor becomes king. That's how I picked it. That's the timeline I chose. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's talk about King Baelor Breakspear Targaryen. Like I said, he lives through Ashford in 209. So that's when this entire thing takes place. So if you're trying to build one for the comments, remember 209. Make sure characters are around at 209, aged up enough at 209, and did not die before 209. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for 209 because that's when this takes place. During the Great King's, right after the Great Spring Sickness. Okay, so so he lives through Ashford, and later that year, his father, King Darren II, dies from the Great Spring Sickness. And before Baelor can take his throne, boom, both of his kids die right away. I'm not sure the order that the heirs and the king die. I don't know if it's the heirs first, but either way, Aerys takes over in the real time or the main timeline. And so there couldn't have been the heirs. So the heirs either died right after Darren or right before Darren, but not quick enough that anyone could crown one of them, right? So both of Baelor's kings die, leaving him the king. But he's a king without his sons, and he's a king just like that. So all of it in one weekend, in one sickness, all of his heirs die, his dad dies, and he becomes king in that order, maybe. Right? So that's horrible. He's having a bad year, okay? But he's king now. So leaving him king, his bookish brother Aerys would be his heir, which we'll see what happens with Aerys. He is very loved by the people, and he has been a hand for a very long time. So Baelor is not new to this whole ruling thing. He would have no issues taking control of the kingdom and establishing dominance. Everybody already likes him. Thanks to this timeline not being in Fire and Blood yet. Volume 2 hasn't came out yet. So we know very little about Darren's council beforehand, and then Aerys, which would have been taking place at this exact time. So I had to do a lot of digging. So Aerys the First is his heir, but I don't see him being I do see him being pressured to step down, but that isn't important for the council. I just want you to know, I do see one of the first things he does is at least ask the bookish Aerys, who does become king in the main timeline, to step down. He's like, dude, I don't think you're going to make a good king. I'd rather it be somebody else who we're about to talk to. I don't know if that will happen, right? Maybe he takes the black. Maybe he just goes into self-imposed exile. Or maybe Aerys goes, no. And they just have to put up with him being the heir. But that's Baelor's heir right now, right? He knows So maybe he's going to try to remarry and make another heir, but he's kind of already older. He's long in the tooth at this point. Baelor Breakspear is. So, yeah, I'm just talking about heirs of what would he end up doing, and I think that there's at least a chance that him and his hand try to get Aerys to step down. That's all. All right, moving on to his hand, and that is Maekar Targaryen. Yeah, Maekar. We know in the main timeline that he was shocked that Aerys didn't name him hand and named Brynden Rivers instead. Yeah, in the main timeline, not only did he accidentally kill Baelor, right after that, later that year, Aerys becomes king, and Maekar's like, "All right, I'll be your hand," and he goes, "No, I'm gonna make Brynden Rivers my hand," and Maekar like deuces. I'm not gonna put the hands up, but you know, he like he gives him the double deuce, and he goes to Summerhall and he just sulks until Aerys ends up dying later on. So he's like, "Bye. I can't believe you didn't make me hand," which tells me it would make a lot of sense, and everyone kind of suspects that he's kind of runner-up for hand after Baelor becomes king. So there you go. He gets named hand. Baelor would not want to make that pick. Wait. Yeah, Baelor would not make... Oh, yeah, he would not make that pick, although Maekar would need to... Yeah, he definitely wouldn't go with Brynden is what I'm saying here. Maekar would need to dial his anger back a tad. Yeah, because he's kind of a hothead. I do think like Baelor's gonna be like, dude, if you're gonna be my hand, you're gonna have to, you know, kind of take a deep breath and count to 10 every once in a while because you tend to be a little nuts, right? Maekar does. He's a bit of a hothead. So I'm not saying he's crazy. I'm just saying he's got a temper. I do see him trying to become heir, like I said, asking Aerys to take the Blacker exile. If Bloodraven is actually trying to, quote, trim the family tree to make sure that it goes to Egg and his kid, he wouldn't buck letting Maekar be heir. But all that aside, he's a capable hand. Yeah, because a lot of people, I'm not saying I do or don't subscribe to this, think that Bloodraven, which we're getting to, is actually trying to push the family tree down to a specific part of the family, and that is Aegon. And then eventually Aegon's great-grandkids, right? He's trying to push it to where he thinks which part of the Targaryen timeline the Prince of the Promise would be born into. So a lot of people think. And if that's the goal, getting rid of Aerys helps, right? Aerys was like a placeholder for Maekar to become king to make Aegon the heir eventually after a council, right? So even Bloodraven, I think, would be like, yeah, like we can sashay Aerys away. So yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to talk about Aerys anymore. But yeah, I think Maekar could be a really good hand as long as he kind of calms down a little bit. Let's rock some more of these out. We're not going very fast. Master of Coin, Michael Manwoody. Michael Manwoody, heck yeah, was a knight of House Manwoody during the reign of Daemon II Targaryen. So we're going to talk kind of go back a little bit because this guy would be older. He married Princess Elia Targaryen, one of my favorite Targaryens, by the way, and she was born in 150 AC, right? So this is 209. So she would be 59 at this time. He was said to be very smart and very witty, has a really great personality. He loves music, and that's what Elia really likes about him. Darren once trusted Michael, sent Michael to Braavos to negotiate on behalf of the Iron Throne, the Ironbanker Braavos. So since he was so trusted with money and stuff by his dad, and he married the now old lady, Alena Targaryen, he seems like a wise older man, kind of like Lyman Beesbury. So I see Baelor picking him, right? So a lot of the stuff he does is kind of further back, but we know that he's still alive at this part of this timeline, and so is Alena. Alena doesn't die until her 70s, at least around that, according to what I at least could tell from the World of Ice and Fire. Because like I said, a lot of these aren't covered in Fire and Blood yet, so we don't have a lot of information. But if Alena Targaryen, one of my favorite Targaryens, is still alive, and so is her husband. Like I said, he'd probably be in his mid to late 50s or maybe even early 60s at this point. But the dude's really smart, and he's really cool and really charismatic and probably gives really good counsel. Not only that, but he has literally been trusted to negotiate with the Iron Bank at some point for Darren II, so Baelor's dad. He's probably been at court for a long time. Baelor probably knows him and trusts him, and I think he's a really good master of coin. Plus, he's a Manwoody, and I love Manwoodies. So, yeah. All right. Let's do one everyone knew was going to be on here, and that's going to be our Master of Whispers. Of course, Brennan Rivers, Blackfyre. Yeah, he would have to be, right? He's got to be. He might be butthurt that he isn't Hand, and he might start getting rid of more of his family members to get more power, right? But at least at the start, Baelor would keep him here or put him here. He is easily one of the most powerful Master of Whispers of all time. I didn't say best, just most powerful. He will be needed in the upcoming Blackfyre rebellions. Yeah, you don't have Dunk to just like stop the second one with the help of Maynard Plum. So Maynard Plum's gonna pretty much do this one by himself. So without the iron grip that Brennan gets on the realm, because when he's Hand of the King, he's pretty authoritarianism-y, right? And I don't think Baelor would be that way. So maybe that's for the worst. Maybe not for the best. We'll see how Blackfyre Rebellion 2 goes, is what I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be successful. I'm just saying it's going to be more successful without Dunk there and Egg. Because Dunk won't be there because he's missing a hand. All right, let's rock some more of these out. Master of Laws, Manfred Dondarrion. This is an odd one. But Manfred is related to Baelor's wife, Jenna, right? So he's a good brother of the king, Baelor. And we know that he has put down a Vulture King just 3 years earlier in 206. And he is a strong and capable man and military leader. He seemed like a jerk at Ashford Meadow, but he was just being a jerk to Dunk. So, you know, not everybody's, actually pretty much nobody's nice to Hedge Knights. But that's fine. He can be a good leader and still be a jerk to Dunk. Yeah, I think this is a good pick. A lot of times, Master of Laws, people grab capable warriors or tacticians, and also stern people. And I think that he fits that. And also, him being the like good brother, the brother-in-law to the king, definitely helps. All right, let's move on. Grand Maester. This is a person, we just don't know his name. And that's the person. All right, so Ares takes over at the same time Baelor would have in the main timeline, but this time it's Baelor. And this is just Ares's unnamed maester, right? So we do know this guy exists. We just don't know his name. We don't know this dude's name or if he started before or after Darren died. I think after. What we do know, according to Sefton, great. Ares the First's new Grand Maester was as steeped into sorcery as Lord Bloodraven. Whoa! So we don't know this guy's name, but we know that he's into the weird stuff that Brennan is into, right? So instead of Ares, he would be picked for Baelor and work alongside Brennan for better or for worse. It might be good or bad to have some sorcery guy there, but he's not picked by Brendan as far as we know, right? He was picked after the Grand Maester died. So yeah, that's it. He like pretty much instated at the same time as Baelor. He just happens to be really into magic. I wish we knew this guy's name. All right, we got Master of Ships coming, and yeah, Master of Ships. This is gonna be a fun one if my mouse clicks. There you go, Master of Ships, Joseph Mallister. A Mallister, yeah. This was a hard one for sure. Not a good fit from House Velaryon. And we know nothing about the red wines at this time. But we have met Joseph Mallister at the tourney at Ashford. So a lot of these characters, besides Manwoody, were at Ashford. That's kind of all we have to go off of, right? All I have to go off of. So he was at the tourney. And I really dig the idea of a Mallister being Master of Ships because they're kind of in charge of protecting that entire coast, or at least that part of the coast, in the Riverlands and the neck from the Ironborn, right? So it's like they're the Mallisters of Seaguard. Yeah, look, I think that really makes sense for him to be master of ship. Though he got his butt kicked in the joust by Humphrey Harding, that's okay. He can still be master of ships. He doesn't need to be good at jousting to be a good master of ships. You know, whatever. Joseph it is. So we got one more guy. I know this took a while for me to get going, so sorry that's kind of a longer one. But we only got one left, and that is the Lord Commander. Lord Commander! And yeah, who did I pick? Roland Crakehall. Yeah, we met a large number of white cloaks at Ashford. Well, like 3, I think. But we don't know who the LC was, who the Lord Commander was. We also know some died in the Great Spring Sickness, but we do see Roland Crakehall in Dalin of Duskendale years later at Whitewall. So we know those two, and only those two, made it through the Great Spring Sickness. So we know that they are still around. And if I had to pick one of those two, only those two, Donald of Duskendale or Roland Crakehall to be Lord Commander, it would be Roland. Did I say Ronald? Roland Crakehall. His name is stronger, right? He's a Crakehall. And he just seems to be a more respected knight. I don't know how I got that, but I'm just going off of vibes. Plus, I think he kind of looks like Tom Savini, if you know who Tom Savini is. I didn't pick him just because I thought he looked like Tom Savini. I picked him because of what I said, just kind of going off vibes. I don't really have any real evidence of picking him over the Duskendale guy, but I did. So if yours is different, let me know. And there you guys go. What do you think of Baelor's? Sorry, I it took me a while to explain how we got here and all that Targaryen stuff, but yeah, here we are. So what do you guys think of my list? Let me know yours in the comments, and thank you for the request, Kevin Thomas. And yeah, that's it. How off was I? Was I far off? I'm sure you guys will tell me. I put a Manwoody in there. Yeah, deal with it. Peace.